Mark asked where Hillary Clinton was on that subject, and I said wherever she can find the most votes.
Well, Joy said that she was against NAFTA a long time ago. It wasn't so far.
Was she?
With
her husband? You mean she opposed her husband?
Yes. It was a well-known rift between the two of them, and she was definitely against NAFTA.
Oh, I didn't realize.
I would put on par with that action, which is certainly important, but opposing Citizens United, because we're not going to, stop capitalism as long as the Supreme Court is saying corporations are people. And I mean, it's a critical issue to overturn Citizens United.
I agree, but it doesn't. I don't see the connection with global warming. I totally agree with your position, but I don't see the connection with global warming as much as I see TPP. Maybe it is.
Definitely.
Yes,
Absolutely, definitely.
It's hard to.
Well, there are a lot of rich people that are pretty, like Mayor Bloomberg, ex-Mayor Bloomberg, that are really down on global warming, and I mean really against global warming and really want to solve it, and are probably for a carbon tax. I don't know what Bloomberg is on carbon tax.
Is there any hope at all of changing our senators and representatives on positions on, for instance, the DPP?
No. I would just like to know which ones, not that I don't know, which ones are the, well, I'm not a scientist, people, and then sit down and ask them, why do you believe these things? Here's the facts. Why do you believe these things? Because none of them can say why they believe these things. They're being told to say these things. That's the whole misinformation campaign.
I think there's a link there with the money in politics, because they're told by corporate lobbyists what their position needs to be, and that is the missing connection, in my opinion. Why corporations aren't people, and we need to take their influence out of the process if we're to bring about any positive change.
Absolutely.
But the people in Congress now are the ones who are going to vote on this when it comes up. The real
Right.
people, we can't, trying to stop Citizens United, I don't think it's going to affect that particular issue when it comes up for a vote in Congress. I agree with you, but I don't think that's the immediate thing. The immediate thing is how can we influence the acceptance or rejection of the TPP.
Yeah, that's sort of an all or nothing thing right now. TPP is on the edge right now. If it passes, it's over, and that can happen pretty quickly. Whereas Citizens United, that's a little longer term at least. You can hope to overturn it 3 years from now.
Since it is so urgent, we might consider that as another action of our group to add to our fee dividend program.
Maybe we get on Bernie Sanders' website and look to see what to do. I don't know if there's in Arkansas, we don't have a prayer with any of our.
That's what I'm saying. What do we do?
Unless somehow.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
What I want to say is Ralph Nader has a new book about how to get conservatives and liberals together.
Ralph
Nader does, yes. He's the most versatile man, both here. But it's,
Still going.
I bought that book thinking I'm not going to like any of this. But he remembers, because he's old, he remembers that when he was young, that there were Republicans who were quite different from the Tea Party people who have gotten into power. And that there still are those Republicans, and that we ought not to write them off. So I am beginning to, as I'm reading this book, finding it helpful to me to keep an open mind about the Republicans. But I'd also say that we ought to work with the Democrats more. I'm a member of Senior Democrats. I'd love for all of you all to become members and try to influence them.
We don't have any Democrats in office. We can influence our neighbors. They aren't voting in Congress.
No, but it's getting our next presidential candidate.
I'm thinking about the TPP. We got to do that first.
Okay, if that's our focus, if that's our focus, our president's election is a year away, really a year away. So I agree with you.
One of the things that I think is true is that, talking about Congress and the president, leaders don't lead, leaders follow. The people in Congress and the president will do what they think is the swell of public opinion. They follow public opinion. And the only way I think we could influence them is to influence public opinion. And that's a long-term, slow process.
Yeah.
I don't know how we do that, if we could do it in such a way that would be effective enough as far as the TPP is concerned. Is there a way that we could influence any of the senators or representatives? Is only the senator votes, Senate that votes on a treaty, right? They have votes.
I think you're right.
I don't think the House votes on it. I think it's only the Senate.
Yeah.
Is there any way to influence any folks in the country who are not representing Arkansas? But can we have any influence on them that are on the fence? Not the Democrats that we know are going to vote our way anyhow. The ones in the middle.
That's a good question. That would be a way.
Generally speaking, those people won't listen to their constituents if they listen to anybody. But how can we influence whoever influences them? That's my question.
And we could focus on that because there are plenty of senators who need money or maybe on the border. We can find a niche to help influence them.
I wonder if citizens first know who those people are. That's only Arkansas, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's just Arkansas.
Yeah, I got this information a long time ago, but I've quoted it several times to people, and I think it's probably still true. A long time ago, the United Auto Workers made a study of how individual people like us that are not rich and are powerful or not a senator and so forth, how we can spend our time minute for minute and have the biggest political impact. And the answer is write letters to the editor of the newspaper. That was their recommendation. If you have an hour to spend on politics and don't know how to spend it, write a letter to the editor of some newspaper.
I thought about that when I've heard that also, that you think there's such crazy letters that feel in our newsletter, newspapers.
Some of them are crazy.
I understand that politicians, even if they themselves don't read it, their staff does, and their staff reads it, and they compile, and they get an idea, this is like what people are saying, this is what the bulk of the letters are saying. I think it's effective.
Yes.
Gives you a feel for the trend. You look at that newspaper and it's all full of letters on the side.
If we had every day a letter or two on this subject in the Democrat Gazette.
Are we coming to a consensus here that right now we might work on this? And is it closely enough related to warming CO2 to our purpose of this committee to justify our doing that?
We're talking about the transportation department.
Yeah, trying to stop that.
Well, we're not coming to a consensus because if a consensus is everyone agreeing, I'm not agreeing. But perhaps the rest of you are coming to a consensus.
No, we're asking people to speak up. What do you think?
It feels to me like, well, first of all, I just want to say that my political perspective is not liberal. I'm radical and not a liberal. And so I'm not very into, especially trying to influence Congress or influence elections. I prefer thinking about a vision of what I want to see and then trying to create that instead of fighting defensive wars with...
By create, what do you mean, Jane? Go ahead with that.
Well, I'm very unhappy with our society as it is, and I would like to reconstruct a different society.
What would be a radical response to TPP that we might follow?
Well, part of what I'm saying is that from my perspective, I don't know that I would be working specifically on TPP. I mean, I don't want it, I hate it, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do anything about it necessarily, and that's not probably where I would focus. I would focus on some other level to create what I want instead of trying to prevent yet another truly awful thing from happening, because it seems to me that, there are truly awful things happening all over the place, and we keep fighting each of those truly awful things, and what we need to do is to get rid of this whole system and replace it with a system that is not based on a domination structure.
That's Naomi Klein's thesis.
Not exactly, I have a lot of disagreements with her too, but.
She wants to overturn this economic system.
Well, she wants to drastically regulate it. I personally would like to get rid of it totally. I think she's more into strongly regulating the hell out of it. Seems to me more where she was coming from. So, you know, we don't have to focus on what I would like to see. I just had to say that I wasn't going to be in consensus about this. So, you know,
But yes, because of the urgency,
consensus of the rest of us?
because of the urgency of the matter that people have suggested here, we need to take action quickly. Is that your idea, Shelley?
She's got a great point.
That therefore, we need to get together on this now, those who wish to, it would be, of course, for anybody, for us finally to reach a conclusion today here, what action we might take.
Okay, I'm in total agreement actually with Jean that what is necessary is rebuilding or building from the ground up structures that are sustainable and that are equal. And in fact, our next book is going to be about that. To republicize our next book in June is going, and Gladys is going to be leading the discussion, is talking about how it was done in New Zealand and being done in all these communities around the world. Trying to create equal societies that are sustainable and are free from fossil fuels. At the same time, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is going to make it hugely difficult. At the same time, actually stopping it with the President and the Congress totally focused on getting it through is probably impossible. At the same time, if we don't, just about any, we don't have any say over our commons at all. We don't have any commons.
It's complicated, but.
And also, another thing is that if we want to get talking about getting information out to the people, Obama is just lying about it. Everybody is totally lying about it, and we have to get the information out about what will really happen if this goes through, just how much control we will have lost over our commons if this goes through. It's not a trade pact at all. It's a giving away of all of our sovereignty to corporations.
And there's a huge number of organizations and individuals saying that and telling America about that. But
not on the nightly news.
Not on the nightly news.
No.
Well, I should say, I think it's not a question of either or. It's not a question of or do that or do this. It's a question of doing both. One maybe needs to come before the other. I think there needs to be a specific thing done. If we're agreed that the TPP is a really bad deal, do something about it. I would love to see that, and I also would love to see us create a new society. And Jean's doing it on a small scale by the way she's living. And some of us are doing it even tinier scale in the way we're living, what we're able to do. And promoting people doing that in their own individual lives and their own communities and creating that kind of a sustainable living is wonderful, and I applaud that. Meanwhile, I'd like to see us do what we can to continue to make it possible to do that at some point.
that seems to me a persuasive argument for both
Let's do both.
you all. That we
Want to
do
get some
both.
letters to the papers, get some letters to the papers.
Well, that's one way.
Would any of you, like either you or Art or whoever is knowledgeable enough, make up a skeleton letter, something with the information in it, and
Get it
send
from
it?
the web, I mean, just
Yeah, but
There's
it's
tons of
time and
material.
resource that I don't have.
Yeah.
If somebody would send me enough something that has the points in it, I'll write a letter, and I'll write one once a month. They only publish it from an individual once a month. But if we had 10 people do that, we could get a constant stream in the paper. And if there was this kind of a skeleton I could use and then change it to fit my own words kind of thing, I would do it. And if I know where to send it, give me that email address of where to send it, That's all changed.
I have lots of material on that. May I send that to everybody?
Sure, please do. Absolutely. We'll actually do it.
And Art has lots of material.
It used to be in a book about this, but it's probably computerized now. All of the newspapers in the state.
It's probably obsolete by now because it's in print.
Well, like I said, it used to be in a book about this thick, and I used it quite a bit. But it's probably on computer now, a list of all of the newspapers in the state, and if somebody really wanted to dig into that, they could, send these letters out. As I said, I haven't used that, since I was doing advertising and promotion, and that was back in the day when it was a bound copy.
More people should write to the Northwest Arkansas Times. I don't see enough letters in there, I'm surprised. Because you get a lot of bang for the buck. You send them to the Times and it's gonna
There is
cost
no
us
Times anymore.
$40.
You mean the Democratic?
It's the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette. That's what it's called. Send to them.
There's only one page of letters now. It's for everybody.
No, it's on two different pages.
Okay.
It's all on the editorial pages, but there's
Right.
one that's the local Northwest Arkansas part, and then the facing page is the state, it comes from the state, and it's also on the Little Rock Gazette.
Well,
If you send to the local paper, it will show up in Springdale and Rogers and Bentonville as well as Fayetteville.
I'm embarrassed to say this, but it has to be said. I haven't gotten any letters published in the past 2 years, and I've sent quite a few letters in.
You have?
At least a half a dozen letters.
You have?
And they're not only not published, but they're not responded to. And they're precise, factual.
But they don't even
Gosh, if you call-
Yes, they don't even acknowledge
Have
it.
you phoned and asked them why they didn't publish?
Somebody else's name.
Oh.
I always assumed they said they would publish all the letters you sent in. That was-
I hadn't spoken to Paul.
know what they do.
I'm really surprised.
It seems to me that's their business if they don't want to publish it. I hadn't thought.
No,
of
check
No,
with it,
it's not
because
exactly.
sometimes they don't get it. I try to maintain a personal connection with Brenda Looper. And one time I didn't get a letter in, and I said, what's going on? And I wrote to her and I said, have you done this? And nothing happened. And I figured she was gone. Turned out she'd been in the hospital for a month.
Well,
And during that period,
one
they
letter
printed
I-
all these crazy letters.
Yeah, you told us that once, and so I didn't think anything about one of my letters back. But the last letter, I had a friend send it. We were using my computer, so they knew what it was. And it still didn't get published. I'm just saying.
Call them and ask them if they're getting it back.
Yeah, be sure it's going to the right place.
I'm really surprised at that. I can't figure it out.
Don't they have a rule that each person is only allowed so many letters?
1 month.
One
One
of
month.
them.
That shouldn't be a problem.
I have
Yes,
to
of
look
course,
at
that's my question.
Call them and ask them if they're getting it, Dick.
Counting my words, I was really careful.
Well, I'm sure your letter was well written. I mean,
Oh, it was?
Of course, and made sense. I mean, considering the number of letters that they print that make absolutely no sense at all, I'm sure that, yours was.
Dick, you only need to do one thing. Call Greg Harden. Be sure you have him, not his assistant or something. And say, Greg, did you get my letter?
Is it Greg or Miss Looper?
What, Ms. Looper.
Oh, well, that's the Gazette. Don't write to the Gazette, write to the.
Well, I wrote to both.
You
Okay.
can do both, yeah. You can do
Different
both.
things.
Brenda Looper is right. If she's for the right side,
Yeah.
Weaver, Greg
Yeah.
Martin, she's
Yeah,
the left.
but I'm saying, don't be disheartened if you don't get your letters. It's really my fault.
Well, I'm surprised they're not publishing all of them. I mean, the loopy
You're not-
letters that they publish, they can't be deciding on basis of quality which ones are not.
Joe, you
They're
didn't
not.
get a letter
That's
from
impossible.
us, didn't you? Or more than once? Just once, yeah. I've heard of it.
You need to ask them if they've gotten your letter.
It is,
You're talking about the Northwest Arkansas Times, and it's owned by who?
it was owned by Stevens, but now it's owned by the Democrat Gazette.
Right, and they are classically
Well, but I don't know that they're
Yeah.
convincing. That
No.
editor wants
No.
controversy.
Well, I'm just saying, you know,
Don't you
they have a
He's
lot of-
happy when I write my atheist article in
Yeah.
their newspaper.
Yeah.
I say, doesn't it give you a bad time? He says, no, we want your articles, it's just what we want.
Yeah, Art is the most maligned person in the letter.
Oh, yes, he is.
There were
I'm happy to be.
Oh, very
There were 2 or 3 bonfires in my neighborhood.
Just call them and ask them if they've gotten your letter, Dick. That's all you need to do.
Pardon?
Is it so dry?
It's probably done.
I don't believe so, ma'am.
Okay, sorry.
It's 3 o'clock.
When I inquired at the desk.
Okay, you will,
When I inquired at the desk, I had this meeting scheduled for another room.
Yeah.
So, from someone
So
else,
we go to
probably
the wall
scheduled
and
this
there
room.
was nobody.
Well, you did. They never told me that. They never told me we were in the other room.
Also, your website says it started at 2, presumably I was 30 minutes late, if you started at 1:30.
The website says
My
practice.
website said that?
Yes, yes, it is.
2?
Yes.
So,
Well, we probably only started earlier.
so that combined with.
We've
the-
always started at 1:30,
Yeah,
that's
I
what
was
we
gonna make
No,
a-
I started when I wasn't late. I came with the appointed hour.
There are evil demons in my computer, I'm sure.
That's why you gotta call the Times and ask them. You gotta talk to Greg Hartman and just ask him if he's got your letter.
Everybody,
Yeah.
if we're packing it in, take one of these before you go. You want to claim it?
No, I didn't, I'm just saying that we started at 1:30 and an hour and a half is quite sufficient for everyone, you feel? And you
Yeah.
see, Susie and I both sat here an hour and a half. And so, what do you think? Shall we, 3 o'clock, be the time to stop? And we suggested lots of major ideas today. And shall I or shall we get back to everybody? And I think with Gene's good criticism, which we all agreed with, because we want, I think we're all here because we want a different world. That we will work on TPP.
Yeah, it's a consensus.
Yeah,
A consensus does not mean unanimous.
No.
It means the overwhelming majority.
Well, it depends on your definition
Yeah.
of consensus, but I mean, I don't care what the.
Majority is
right now
Robert's
at
rules
this
of
time.
order. Consensus means final agreement.
No, we are.
I'm talking about scientific consensus.
But we are working toward the transition movement. It's just gonna take a while.
Yeah.
You know, and meanwhile, it doesn't hurt to write some letters about that.
Is anybody besides me willing to commit to writing a couple of letters?
I'll try again.
All
I
right.
promise to try again.
Anything that this group wanted to write is gonna help. On any topic, I would say.
Also, don't forget the Free Weekly.
Oh,
This
sure.
editor, in fact, every editor of the Free Weekly seems to be open to as many radical views as, I'm astonished. It's owned by Mr. Stevens, isn't it? Or was it purchased by Mr. Hussman? The Free Weekly? It was owned by the Stevens.
Do they publish letters?
And they do. You don't see it very often,
I never see
but
it.
they have published letters of mine in small copies.
They might publish an article too, I mean.
They will.
You know,
Yes.
the quality of all their articles is not that good, so if you send a really good article, they'll probably publish it.
They published 2 articles by Abel Tomlinson on this subject, on our subject. So, don't forget them.
For one closing comment I'd like to make, one closing comment I'd like to make, there's the CCL flyers over there, and what we're working on right now, our main, focus is trying to get a carbon tax through. But what we want for Arkansas at this point is for the legislature to, have an interim study on the impact of carbon feed and dividends in Arkansas. We're working on that. We're bringing Scott Nystrom, who wrote the Riley Report, which is the report on the economic impact of carbon feed and dividend on various states and on the nation. He's going to be here this summer. He's going to be speaking at the Environmental Justice Training Workshop, which is already full. But it would be really good for our legislators to hear. We need this interim study. Listen to what Scott Nystrom has to say, because we can actually improve our economy and reduce our carbon emissions at the same time. It is a total lie that reducing carbon emissions will necessarily change the economy.
Let me suggest a T-shirt slogan. CEOs have grandchildren too.
And I didn't remember what I was getting ready to say a minute ago.
Okay.
I wrote to Roberts about this. He's our climate scientist, and along with Art, we've had two climate scientists. And I asked him, second to fee and dividend or whatever the other options are, giving to purchasing solar, wind, and so forth, what would be your second priority? And he said, Robert McAfee, he said, going to institutions and to governments and, not boycott, I can't think of the other
Are you
word.
talking about this?
Oh, disinvestment, disinvestment, yeah.
Disinvestments.
Right.
He said that's number 2.
Mm.
That's something that we might work on.
Mhm.
There's another word for it, isn't there?
Disinvestment.
Investments. Okay. And the University of Arkansas, for example, probably has investments in fossil fuel companies. We could begin there, and Omni has a chapter on the campus. So here's another option. I think the group wants to do something about TPP right now, but then maybe we might add then disinvestments afterwards.
I agree.
It was successful with South Africa, I think it's universally thought.
Bill McKibben's group is making that a focus of their efforts.
Yes.
The whole McKibben operation. Another thing I would add would be feed-in tariffs and other supports, subsidies for renewables.
And the thing that I sent you all this morning discusses both of those, an outline of a full campaign of what we might be doing, or at least we're aware of all the things we might be doing.